Sergeant Reckless, the true story of the little horse who became a hero, written by Patricia McCormick and illustrated by Jacopo Bruno. Red Korean forces invade South. June 25th, 1950. The small red mare whinnied for her supper, but Korea was at war. Towns were shattered, fields were scorched, and the racetrack was abandoned. No one paid attention to the hungry little horse. Nearby, U.S. Marines were exhausted from hauling heavy ammunition uphill to a powerful new cannon nicknamed Reckless Rifle. That's when their leader, Lieutenant Eric Peterson, had an idea. What if he could get a mule to carry the shells? But all Lieutenant Peterson could find was a scrawny sorrel mare with a white blaze and 3 matching socks. She wasn't much, but she reminded him of a horse he'd had as a boy. So he took a chance on her. Back at the base, as the Marines gathered around to meet the new recruit, Lieutenant Peterson realized he'd forgotten to buy hay. One of the men held out a piece of bread. The mare gobbled it up. Then she devoured the rest of the loaf. Another man offered her some oatmeal. She licked the bowl clean. She was pretty. The Marines agreed, but she was small. Could she carry such heavy ammunition? And how would she react when she heard the thunder of the cannon? A mule was slow and steady, but a racehorse was high-strung and skittish. She'd have to go through special training, and she'd start out at the same rank as any newbie. Private. Private Reckless. The first thing Private Reckless had to learn was to duck incoming fire, which meant that her trainer, Sergeant Joseph Latham, had to teach her to kneel down. First, he gave her a sugar cube every time he tapped her front leg, then another when she knelt down. Before long, the greedy little horse knelt down the moment he tapped her leg. Reckless also had to learn to retreat. When Latham gave the command, she had to trot back to her bunker, where another reward was waiting. An apple, or a chocolate candy bar, or a peanut butter sandwich, even a can of beans. Whatever it was, Reckless ate it. Next, Latham led her up a hill to the cannon. With a little coaxing and a lot of chocolate, she'd soon follow Latham anywhere. Finally, she was fitted with a pack saddle, a padded wooden cargo frame with leather straps across her chest and legs. Unlike a racing saddle, it was big, bulky, and constricting. Latham cinched up the girth, and the men stood back, expecting her to try to throw it off. Reckless just stood there. They loaded ammunition shells onto her pack and waited for her to buck. But she just put her head down and marched up the hill. Her reward that day was an iced cold Coca-Cola. By now, Reckless thought of herself as a member of the company and was free to roam the camp. One morning she showed up at the mess hall, where the cook gave her an apple. She nudged his shoulder for more, so he offered her scrambled eggs and toast. From then on, she ate the same breakfast as the men and washed it down with a cup of coffee. After she figured out which bunk belonged to the cook, she'd clop into his tent at daybreak and lick his face until he woke up and served her breakfast. The men began looking forward to seeing the little horse with the big appetite when they went to the chow hall. They had come to love her, but deep down they worried when it came to real battle, she might not have what it takes. One day, the Marines spotted enemy troops approaching. Instantly, they went into battle mode. Private Monroe Coleman saddled up Reckless and led her to the top of the hill. Boom! Just as they were delivering their load of the cannon went off. A blast of hot air sent dust and gravel flying toward the horse. Reckless jumped straight in the air, even with 6 shells on her back. Easy, girl, Coleman said, stroking her mane. Boom! The cannon roared again. She jumped, but not so high this time. Boom! This time Reckless just snorted. By the time the next gun went off, Reckless was busy eating a helmet liner she'd found in the grass. From then on, Reckless was one of the guys. On cold nights, she snuck into Latham's tent and slept on the floor. And when the men played poker, she joined in. One night, she'd eaten about $30 worth of poker chips before they caught on. Reckless served in more skirmishes, but her most dangerous assignment came at the Battle of Outpost Vegas. That night, men awoke to shells and white-hot flares falling right inside the base. Reckless trotted back to her bunker, trembling, and for the first time, she refused to eat. But the minute she was loaded with her pack, Reckless got to work. At the base of the pass, she took a deep breath, pricked her ears forward, and charged the hill. Without a word of urging, she broke into a trot and then a gallop. The heavy shells banged against her sides as she hit the steep incline. The first rays of dawn were lighting the sky as she arrived at the top of the trail, her flanks heaving. The sky was full of smoke. Shells whizzed by and cannons boomed. All day, Reckless marched up and down the windy path, hauling her load. As she passed her fellow Marines along the way, they gave her their chocolate bars to keep up her strength. Then a piece of shrapnel hit Reckless over her left eye. Blood trickled down onto her white blaze, but she kept going. Later, another piece of shrapnel hit her left flank. After a dab of iodine and a drink of water, she was back at work. Night fell as sizzling flares cast eerie shadows on the landscape. The Marines were beginning to tire, but they saw the little mare silhouetted on the ridge, her head hanging as she put everything she had into her job. She was soaked in sweat, lather curling up over her saddle. When she came back down the hill, one by one, the men took off their body armor jackets and laid them over her for protection. By the end of the day, Reckless had made 51 trips, gone a distance of 35 miles up and down steep terrain, carried 9,000 pounds of ammunition. That battle helped change the course of the war. At last there was a ceasefire, and Reckless was able to rest. The Marines promoted Reckless to sergeant, and then they came one by one to say goodbye to the little mare who'd shown as much heart on the battlefield as any man among them. When they got home, they started a campaign to bring Reckless to the United States. A shipowner agreed to pay her passage, and the men took up a collection to buy her a beautiful scarlet and gold blanket with sergeant's stripes. By the time the boat arrived, Reckless had eaten her blanket, ribbons and all. Sergeant Reckless, the little mare who became a Marine, is the only animal to officially hold military rank. She received 2 Purple Hearts and retired with full military honors and the rank of Staff Sergeant. Her story is a testament to the mysterious bond between humans and animals and proof of the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, ever faithful. And their author's note tells a little more about the war and the end of the war, and that after Reckless came to the United States, she lived out her days in a grassy compound at Camp Pendleton in California, and she mothered 3 foals, Fearless, Dauntless, and Chesty. An official letter about her retirement care specified that she be given Coca-Cola in limited amounts and scrambled eggs lightly salted without pepper. She is now honored with a life-size statue at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. The end.